Blessed love and peace. We're back at it at Cinco, 5 o'clock in the morning, where you're going to be not doing things on the internet is advisable, where it should not be. But here we are again, as we said we would not be, or we'll try not to be. But it's that situation. Well, it's a compounded situation. Ain't no excuses. Bad example from the jump. That being said, first thing to talk about, it's been a minute. First thing to talk about, love. And I'll just say one thing right now. Love is an invitation to pain. Love is an invitation through pain. That being said, we're going to go back to the introduction premise. Oh, did I not say blessed love and peace? Did I not? I'm not tired, but maybe I am. Referring to recollection and repetition. Earphones, materiality, that's what we begin with as the preface before talking about love. Flexing, new joints. Actually, I should check to see if this audio works, actually, to be honest. I'm going to presume it does. Oh, that's going to be nasty if I do this for because we got something this year. And if I do this for an hour, and it's all and I don't want to stop recording now. It's been working, but this joint is always different. And these are new devices. Ooh-wee. That's going to be interesting. We're going to be mindful about this. We're going to continue and see what happens. That's going to be painful, but it's going to be motivation to keep this comparatively brief, to be honest, even though we got things to share. We're not trying to limit it, because it's been a minute. So, earphones, flexing, whoa dee, look at do, fancy wah dee da. Now, again, we're not big on the materiality thing, too tough. However, what we will share is this. Kinfolk who see me with the duct tape joints for a while, probably over a year or so, it can look somewhat humorous, it could look somewhat endearing. Oh, isn't he frugal and eccentric and this and the other? But at the same time, a number of kinfolk who have a caring and concern, affection, love for me might be like, oh, that looks hurt. Like, come on, man. Can I get you something? Can I help you? Please. It pains me to see this if I'm looking in disarray or whatever. So it's understandable if the clothes is looking dingy, if there's a hole or a this, that, and the other. So it's understandable. And there's a certain validity within that concern. Like, yeah, it's not easy. It's not, and it is like seeing myself with the duct tape and everything. It's not the easiest thing or whatever. But again, we got priorities, and we do our best to focus on those priorities. But when it becomes a distraction and further, then, okay, we receive the blessings that are shared and offered accordingly. So, and the thing is, just one of the reasons why I say this is one, that people do care, and that there is support. So when I look at certain types of ways or whatever, it's not because there's not an opportunity to receive things by the grace of the Most High through the children of the Most High who walk this earth. There's continual offerings from close loved ones, family, friends, and even strangers insisting. So we give thanks. That being said, at the same time, we know in this life, on these roads of creation, we must pay for everything we receive in life. We've got to pay. Ain't no free lunches. And whatever we receive in this life, we're giving something up. necessarily. It's the quid pro quo of life. We give something up, we relinquish it. And for those who have an understanding, at first, we ain't got nothing in this life. We don't possess or own anything. Um, it's a matter, we can talk it or describe it as concentration, relationship, concentration of relationship, and otherwise. But my point is that in accepting material things, particularly and significantly, one of the things that we can often sacrifice or lose in that process is relationship and concentration of relationship, loved ones, floating distant, further distant and distant and distant. If we go on a career track, and additionally you go accepted to university, prestigious, oh, free ride and everything, it's not free because it costs 4 years of your life being away from your family and the kinfolk that you grew up with. That's extreme expense. So it's being matter of being mindful of these things. Everything that we receive, these earphones or whatever else, I have to pay a price. And so we have to weigh each decision. We have to weigh each option, each opportunity of what we gain, what we do with it, what's the purpose of it, and again, focusing on that. And then what we give up, what do I give up for these earphones? I don't want to think about it, to be honest. I know I give up something, and again, am I contradicting myself? No, that's completely congruent. We don't think about it, and it's difficult to think about everything in every exchange. When I light this up, when I do this and everything, but I'm giving up. I'm talking on this thing. I'm giving up my sleep right now. I'm giving up the integrity of my discipline of prayer and meditation. It's 5 a.m. I should be sleeping and getting ready to wake up and do a.m. prayer. So that's one of the things I'm giving up, because now I have this, and now I have this incentive, or not incentive, but this, it's not even motivation, but this precipitous, or this unsettledness of explaining why and sharing accordingly. And that's keeping me from sleeping. Ha ha. And so now I have to vent it in order to release it. And that costs me the sleep. And potentially, prayers and meditation, I pay. And that's just some of it. So that being said, there's a purpose, because I'm able to record things, share things. I use this to communicate, phone calls, and additionally, and connect with loved ones, family, friends. So it's a matter of like, okay, to do those things I just mentioned in terms of relationship with others, there's things I have to give up in that process. And so this is one of it. It's like somebody gives you a new car. Whoa, no car. But all of a sudden you find yourself running errands for people all the time. You thought you had a new car. You thought you had a ride. Go wherever you want to go. Lo and behold, now you find yourself being the chauffeur. Chauffeur. How about that? Chauffeur. Chauffeur. Driving anybody else. Oh, you just got that ride. Oh, no, we chipped in onto it. Yo, can you ring me over here? Yo, just this one thing. So again, everything we accept is a price to pay. Being mindful of, again, focusing, what's the purpose? What you want that ride for? What you going to do with that? You want to floss? You want people to think you bigger? Okay. And now what do you give up in that process? Peace of mind, even that. So, all right, that being said, flossy. It's difficult for me to discern what level of floss this is. These seem to be decent. But I'm away from, it's been a long time since I've done the shoppy shop. So, to know like what's around or whatever else. But these are decent. It works. Hallelujah. Alhamdulillah. Baruch Hashem. Bado. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, there's the preface. 10 minutes in, now we talk about love. Love, actually that wasn't the song we heard today, it was Friends. And it said one love, but it used one love in a different way, because one love is supposed to be universal, and it was describing it as like a first love thing. But anyways, love is love. And then there's different expressions and experiences of love. I already said love is an invitation to pain. Love is an invitation through pain. What up? Now, in my experience, hobby, oh, joy and pain, like sunshine and rain. Raw bass. Um, ah, this is what it is. Yo, if this don't record, ooh, D. People continue to say, what language is he speaking when he does his interjections? Is that cussing? When you figure it out, you can let me know. How about that? um, one could say it is otherworldly. There is not an English, there's not a language articulatable. So, anyways, we just say all thanks and praise the Most High. Love, joy, pain. What we talk about? Ah, yes, metaphor, parable. No, we call this a metaphor because it's a little bit difficult. So it's not going to be the beauty of a natural parable of nature. And is this? Oh, we'd already rubbed my eyes. I thought I wasn't tired. I thought I wasn't tired. Have you ever had a scab? Have you ever had a girl that you want to date? Something, and she wanted you, right? That's Bismarcky, and again, it's that possessive, kind of controlling kind of thing. So we're not talking about that. I'm getting this unhealthy nostalgia, to be honest. It's nostalgia, so there's affection and genuine like that, but at the same time, it's like, that's not the best example. It's not the best guidance. So I can't help getting these things. I can't help saying it though. But continuing on, a scab. And when I'm not talking about the scab you just peel off and then there it is. I'm talking about like a scab where you've had somebody, I'll say this. I'll put in my first person situation. I'm trying to relate, but I'll just say it because it's a scab. So it's usually when somebody has a scab, it's not from a pleasant experience, however severe. But I'm talking about having a scab where it's going to leave a scar. I have them type of scabs. And a scab where like the skin tissue is working just to reconnect. So that scab is very necessary. And it's not just a matter of peeling off like a dead zit or something like that, and like that euphoric kind of cleansing thing of just clearing out whatever debris there is in the system, grease all piled up or whatever in that zit. Oh, this is called graphic science, pseudo, sort of. Anyways, I'm talking about a scab where the skin's got to attach, the skin's got to reconnect. And whenever that scab's been pulled off, if you get a Band-Aid and it sticks to the Band-Aid, oh, you tear this. Oh, I've teared the scab. I've had a hit with like a burn, and the skin had to reattach, and I put a bandage on it. No, because guess what? All that tissue just comes off when you have to remove when I remove the bandage. That second person, I'm not trying to be predatory when I articulate this, so I gotta work on this discipline again. It's been a minute. Ain't no excuses. I've had scabs where it's doing like I had a scab on my shin, tore my shin up. Genuinely needed stitches, didn't get it, and so it was a big gash, and it was like based on the experience of the hit beforehand, years before that, just let the wound open, kept it open, clean. Not any clothing on it, whatever, not letting anything touch it, and let the skin attach to itself until it gets strong enough. Then it can be covered and work on its own. But my point is, in that process of that skin reattaching, and for whatever reason, if it's a bandage, if this clothes gets connected to whatever, and then the scab rips. I mean, it could be painful depending upon the nature of the wound, but it's also frustrating because that skin is working like to connect and strengthen and like heal up again so that it's synonymous, so that it is one. So what my point with all that is, that's relationship. How about that? Particularly between a man and a woman, being one flesh, literally. How about that? It's a process of fusion, that two flesh becoming one flesh, like the skin reattaching itself. It's very tender, and it takes care and nurturing for it to become strong, so that it becomes that oneness. And in that beginning process, and the communication and the feels and everything else like that, the vibrations and the energy and all the, there's still that that necessity of fusion. And when things happen, as it does in life, communication, miscommunication, distractions, temptation, priorities, influences, and everything else like that, that those tissues that are starting to bond and form, and like, yo, this may be the oneness, all of a sudden tearing, separating, and pain. So, anyways, that's some of what is experienced, some of what is observed, some of what is shared and learned, and some of what continues in this life. So that's the joint. And the thing is there's no breakups. I mean, ultimately, in a spiritual, mindful, transcendent existential sense, there's no breakups, and there's no faults. There's nobody's blame. This and the other. It's just like, it's like what. It's not even a matter of like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, and trying to retrace steps, or try to make up for things. But it's a matter of like, yo, it is for what it is, for the reason that it is. That's not yin yang. That's truth. And so it's a matter of being reconciled with that, recognizing that, particularly in relationship, and for those of us who are like fierce individualists, it's so humbling, because we don't do this by ourselves. We cannot do it by ourselves. If there's anything we can't do in this life, is be in relationship with somebody else by ourselves. So we've got to work, and that is very humbling for people who are, I'm independent, da 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 da. You know? So, in that experience, there's no breakup. Relationship is infinite. Love is infinite. True love, lust and gain, that's finite. Yeah, that's over. Like, get a new quarter and start over. That's an arcade reference for those who have remembrance of what an arcade is, and when they cost a quarter, before they cost 50 cents and a dollar, and then home game systems. Anyways, for those type of selfish types of things, yeah, it's over. Congratulations, you played yourself. That's a quote. That's a reference, but I use second person, so be mindful of that. I'm doing a lot. I'm being very predatory right now. I gotta be mindful of that. I'm like a zebra that's biting, so a wee bit of distance. So, all right. There's no breakups. There's no divorces. Life and relationship and love is infinite. It continues on. There may be separation. There may be distance, and that may be just as difficult or whatever else. But some of what tempers that pain and everything is recognizing that, one, it's infinite. We all return into the oneness in our belief. So it's like, okay, see you then. And at that point, like, everything is manifested. All those dreams and aspirations that we wanted and we experienced and like thought about, it's manifested in that process of returning into that oneness. So everything happens, everything occurs, all the nasty occurs. It's a matter of how we concentrate ourselves. So, is it delusional? If you try to deny anything, it's going to be dubious. So, yes, and there's further too. There's truth and coherence. So, So that's the experience. We do our best to learn and prepare for the next occasion, God willing, Elohim willing, inshallah, Biztashem. So that's some of the experience. And in that process, to make it much less painful, to make it much less, and eventually after like letting go of pain, it's like energy at that point. It's like to make it less draining of energy. It's just a matter of it's a matter of not getting mad, not blaming somebody or anybody. Oh, it's their fault. They shouldn't have said this. Meaning, like if two people are working to be together, that's what I'm doing here. And then, oh, it's that they said this or they did that, or nah, nobody's blame. Some dude came through and was like player hating or like trying to just do a flex move or whatever else. So what? That's life. It's the wilderness. Another butterfly comes and shows off his colors. Yo, life. So, what, get mad at that? Nah. Be you, the best you can be. Butterfly. Um, and everything is purpose. And that doesn't just mean, that's not just like a code word for just giving in and just like, oh, that's fine. No, I'll just be a monk and retire to a mountain or to a sea basin, bottom, whatever. Live, learn, get over your ego. I'm second person again, and a command. Why not? Let's get over our egos and focus on purpose. And they're like, okay, interesting. I could have said this, could have done that. But even then, at some point, I'm trying to think of what I learned in recent experience. Okay, here's some of what I learned. Again, relationship, in my experience, let me tell it, is about, particularly between a man and woman, husband and wife, is a matter of learning, knowing about each other, knowing the ins and outs, not just about each other personally, about personal lives, but of one's culture, tradition, expectations, the routines, the rituals, and additionally, and just in having an instinctive, intuitive knowledge. That is, it's not necessarily um, an absolute necessity, because kinfolk can meet each other from very different backgrounds and not have that intuitive knowledge and still work out a relationship, because have different fundamentals that are congruent. However, that being said, it is extremely beneficial. There is some type of necessity for that, a significant necessity, to have that intuitive knowledge at some point, and it's very helpful for it to be there at the beginning. When it's not, it's a matter of being mindful of that, and then maybe being further transcended to be able to like make that space to learn that instinctive, to study and respect each other and learn about each other. So that being said, wow, that was a big sideways or a side one. What I learned is that, young sister, um, first, this lifestyle is not system. It's not the imperialism. Um, it's different from the imperialism, I should say. Everything is everything. Many kinfolk are without the training to live this life. It's difficult. It's beautiful. It's miraculous. It's nasty. And it requires a certain amount of knowledge and discipline. And so many older sisters who are accustomed to like systemic ways of doing things, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of religion, regardless of class, many kinfolk are particularly at a certain age, particularly at 18, citizenship. That's a huge delve, investment, commitment, attachment to the systemic ways of doing things. And when we talk about system, we're talking about imperialism. So to live this life is a large step away from that. And the older a person becomes in getting accustomed and living and acclimated and proficient in a systemic way, and the attachments and the methodologies, strategies, and the drawn lines of us and them and everything, the further one matures in life in the systemic way, the further difficult it is to step from that, to trust that. And additionally, regardless of how pretty and charismatic it is outside, to commit, it might be a vacation thing. Oh yeah, let's talk with so and so for a minute. But in terms of living that, it's a huge step. The further one progresses in life. So with Sistren, the older a Sistren gets, and either further credentials and everything else a Sistren gets, the further difficult it is for her to make that leap. Now, what I'm about to say is going to sound like completely contradictory, but that's one thing. So, so the younger Sistren is, and less entrenched within the systemic imperialism kind of thing. And I'm not saying imperialism as bad boogeyman. It's just like that's what it is. Further entrenched in that, the further difficult it is to step, particularly when parents are part of it, kinfolk are part of it, friends are part of it, culture is part of it. It's just the way it is. So that's one thing. The further a sister matures and grows in the systemic ways, the further of a step it is away from that. So when a sister is younger, we either one, if she's raised outside of it, religious kinfolk, traditional Orthodox kinfolk are raised out significantly outside system. Everyone's attached to it one way or the other, but particularly sense of valuing oneself is in cultural traditions. Like if somebody's like, can't necessarily say immigrant, because a lot of immigrants are very much hugely invested in imperialism. Um, but people who are accustomed or who are acculturated to ancestral ways of doing things, that's how kinfolk significantly value oneself. And so there's less emphasis. It might be like, okay, get as much money as you can, but remember what's actually important, which is our ancestors, our culture, our language, and additionally. So it's not an aversion towards rising through the ranks, but it's just a matter like, it's probably not going to be as much because this is what we seriously do. So kinfolk who have that mindset, um, are less involved and less attached and less dependent upon systems and institution, imperialism. But at the same time, kinfolk who are in that don't mess around with kinfolk who are not in that same fold, culture, religion, language, or otherwise. Um, that's the train of thought. I was talking about kinfolk being acclimated or conditioned into a certain way of being. Oh, okay. So the younger sister is, if she gets older, she's further attached to the system, particularly because that's just the general mainstream kind of thing. Go to school, getting education, university degree. That's system. That's all system. And it's a conditioned mindset that actually significantly um, admonishes marriage and healthy relationship, because that is a distraction away from being a productive laborer, even a white collar productive laborer. So instead of advocating that and providing guidance of how to be in a healthy relationship and be married, it's just a matter of like get as much money as you can, be as elite as you can, and da 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 da. So it's strong conditioning, and parents very often in the mainstream flow contribute that. So that's part of the big step away from that. People with traditional upbringing tend to emphasize marriage further, and relationship further, and things outside of the system. But like I said, I'm doing a loop to loop. People who are raised in a traditional way tend to be just in their own set and don't mess with anybody outside of that. Um, so sister who's and also sister who are tend to get married at a younger age when being raised in a traditional way. So for kinfolk like myself, for brethren like myself, searching for marriage, even with these gray hairs and everything, uncle the other day said I'm too old to be married. Haha. We're not going to say what else brethren said, but we all know that. We all know better than that. Do we all know better than that? I think so. I might want to talk about it, and we might question, but anyways, um, he know better than that. I should say that. I'll say that he know better than that. Now that being said, for myself, for kinfolk like myself, mixed um, with like in the mixed experience, the experience of like a traditional kind of core where it's just us, it's still being cultivated. So there's a it's different from being in a homogenous kind of group where we can just like, oh, I'm gonna go into my fold and just be with my kinfolk, because it has yet to that has yet to exist, to be honest, like proper like. So what that requires, particularly in terms of searching for marriage, and additionally, is finding other kinfolk, finding sistren, or families that have daughters who are in a similar mindset. But again, many mixed kinfolk are attached either to a specific homogenous traditional thing and are just acclimated into that traditional homogenous joint, or are attached to the mainstream imperialist kind of systemic thing, um, and have less of a inclination towards the discipline and the rigors of living a traditional kind of life. Um, could you say pop life? It's ancestral life, so nearby. Anyways, that was a Prince reference, or the artist formerly known as Peace and Blessings, rest in peace. So, point is, wow, we're getting half an hour to this joint. We're gonna have to bring out the hanky. And as tired as this hanky is, it's actually a positive sign because it's been utilized for a number of days, which means that my nasal situation has actually been rather decent amidst all the weather changes recently. So kudos to the handkerchief. All right. Continuing on with this joint. Let's wrap this up. This part of it, because we got further things to say. Half past the hour. So, point is that when sistren become older and acclimated to the system, it becomes a further leap. So, the younger sistren is particularly before becoming a citizen, which is very ironic because not ironic, but like part of the like the kick, because um, that's the age of legality for a woman to be married on her own volition. She also has that's also the same age of being a citizen. So, like, in order for her to be married on her own, there's this onus of being a citizen and buying into the system. Um, Very interesting that. Now, there's pragmatics, there's reasons for that, but point here is that when the system is younger and has yet to be entrenched within systemic, it's that step from where she is to like living this traditional world life. It's not that big of a step, um, as compared to later years. However, there are barriers because, again, um, the mainstream convention only officially allows her to make that decision once having bought into itself, um, which is part of the nature of the imperialism. We could also even get to the language of enslavement in many ways. Citizenship is a form of enslavement. OD. It is actually, um, without trying to be too shady or cast too much shade. There's further point to this. I'm trying to work to wrap it up. Now, okay, so here's the thing. What is also recognized in recent experience is that um, even though a sistren at a younger age is less of a step, and a sistren is further honest, further innocent, generally speaking, has yet to be as corrupted years into like the atrocities and afflictions that are done through the systems and allegiances and everything else like that, the strategies. So she's further proximate with this path of the world traditional peace, discipline, da 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 da. Now, that being said, at the same time, barrier because of the um, conventional prohibitions, but also, and this isn't, we won't get into disclaimers, um, but in addition, also, it's not easy to make that decision of marriage. That's life, a life commitment at a young age. That's huge steps. And so even when the sister is younger, it's like paradox because she's younger, it's not as much of a big step as opposed to latter years, but at the same time, that just marriage itself is a huge step for her at a younger age. Um, so that's somewhat of the paradox. Now, at the same time, what I'm experiencing, observing uh, of recent days and weeks and months and whatever, is that the older sister, we know this for a long time, but the older sister is, the further, um, generally speaking, there's significant, um, not even exceptions, but um, qualifications to the statement. But generally speaking, the older sister is, the further motivated she is to be married. And so that's part of the paradox because sister in her mid 20s. That's it's a difficult example. I can say why in a second, but particularly late, we could say late 20s and early 30s. Strong motivation for being married. Um, been through a lot of the rigors, seen a lot of the pitfalls, seen a lot of like what there is in life, and also the clock is ticking, the biological clock, so to speak, um, and that maternal instinct is like kicking in. So there's further motivation to getting settled down, and additionally, um, so, but again, comfortable, generally speaking, with life, getting accustomed to certain like lifestyle, and additionally, and not willing to like, or it being further difficult to like just let those things go altogether for a traditional life. So, anyways, that's part of the paradox that is experienced. Um, Meanwhile, we just keep on going. We do our best. Recognize purpose, looking for shared purpose, um, being mindful of abstaining from imposing. Again, not getting mad, not blaming, not trying to punish. I think that I was venturing to say that before. What I've learned in life. I think I was supposed to be saying that like maybe 20 minutes ago. Um, what I've learned in life in terms of minimizing how much pain we experience in the process of building relationship and further, and particularly in the process of whenever there's separation or whatever, not to get mad, not to blame, and not to try to punish, not try to make somebody feel one's own pain or whatever else and make them feel what one feels. Here we go with the siren. Um, we get notifications, and um, it's like there's what else. This is it. So like that's one thing I'll mention. Okay. Um, okay. Um, I was saying something a second ago. Almost wrapping it up. Almost wrapping this joint up. I was saying something about relationship. I was saying something about purpose. Yeah. Okay. See it. Um, okay. I was talking about not getting mad, not blaming, and not trying to punish. That is helpful in building a relationship. That's helpful when can folks separate into different directions. And additionally, for there not to be resentment, yeah, okay. For there not to be resentment, um, there's less second guessing. There's less regrets or semblances of regrets. Um, there's less of the occasion of saying anything that's hurtful, so that we don't have to feel bad about it. Because there's so many situations I experience in life where there's a presumption. Okay, we'll see the next person the next day or whatever else. So in the moment we say things and now we just get it out because we want to just like purge it from our minds or whatever. And then we think about it that night, like, oh, yeah, that was kind of harsh. I'll talk to him tomorrow. But there is not. No, that was it. Never see him again in life. And it's like, yo, that was it. Yo. So when we have patience in the moment and we don't say those things just to vent and make ourselves feel better, and even maybe we absorb somewhat further of the abuse and just like take that hit at that moment and just be like, you know what? All right, this is person's tripping, but I'm not gonna retaliate. So much, it's the world of difference. And so yeah, we might get that ego hit, and we got to be careful about that because that can affect us if we keep taking absorbing those hits. But at the same time, yo man, the heart is much lighter. The regrets, you can sleep better. Let me tell it, sleep better the next day. Being like, okay, you know what, and you be grinding the teeth about like being done dirty and disrespected and dehumanized and everything else, but at the same time, all right, at least I didn't do it back. All right, I ain't gotta atone for that. I gotta maybe atone for allowing myself to be abused, whatever, and think about how I put myself in those situations and how to avoid that again. How I not put myself in those situations, how I put myself in situations that are further healthy and supportive and flourishing, thriving, fertile. So, but at the very least, I ain't put that out there. I ain't put that in the world. So, anyways, talking about the malaise, uh, and that's particularly helpful in the experience of relationship between man and woman. Um, as deep and uh, mysterious as it is, um, to be patient, and be honest, compassionate, modest, humble, purposeful. And that's the thing, purpose. Recognize that even that relationship is for a greater purpose. Not to put the woman first, not to put the man first. It's purpose first, the Most High, and fulfilling our purpose in this life and recognizing that it's done mutually, connectedly. I was going to say cogently, but I have to look that one up again. But together is what we say. That a man and a man fulfilling his purpose and a woman fulfilling her purpose when the man and woman are together, and fulfilling the purpose together, bringing new life, teaching new life, raising new life, sharing new life, children what it is. So, hallelujah. Purpose. When we put that, everything else is in perspective. So it's not a matter of doing what the woman wants just because she's number one. No. It's not a matter of doing what the man wants because he's number one. No. It's a matter of this is what we're here for in life. That's number one. And here's how we do it together. We might be number two, number three. Are we going to have another one? Here it is. There it is. Numero cuatro. Somebody's hurting right now at the moment. There's four squad cars that just pull off with not sirens, but lights flashing. 5:45 in the a.m. And this is 5:45 regular time. 4:45. Yeah, 4:45 local time. So it's actually this is the madrugada. This is the darkness of night at the moment. So 4 squad cars just passed by with lights flashing. That's not a usual thing, at least generally speaking. It's not unheard of, but it's not usual. Ain't no car accidents happening at this moment. Too tough. So and the direction the squad cars are going is not the typical direction, because those are the richer houses in that direction. Anyways, so love. That's one thing about love. Now, one thing I will also say is that there's observance that like the system seems to be endeavoring to work better with myself in terms of me being married. And it's like lions and hyenas working together to like bond. Hyenas are going to be hyenas, lions are going to be lions. And it's like even when lions and hyenas got to work together, there's always that testing and like just reversion, like, oh nah, forget it, and at each other. So I'm not a lion, I'm not a hyena. I'm just giving that example. Um, I want to say the system's like hyenas because it's predatory, and hyenas. So maybe I have a bias. Maybe I have a lion bias. Respect and blessings to hyenas. Um, but it's just that kind of what I'm talking about specifically is how the system sniffs for weaknesses, and when it finds a weakness, it like can't help but to like try to get at it. And so when trying to like even when system is like working, making an effort to like support, make introductions in terms of even relationship and marriage, it's like, oh, but nah, never mind. And then like, yeah, nah, yeah, it's Pharaoh. It's Pharaoh. That's what it is. Pharaoh. Literally, 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 it is Pharaoh. Experiencing hardships. Okay, we're gonna have to work this out. We're gonna have to respect these kinfolk. We're gonna have to do something. All right, fine. Okay. Just like, yo, ease up. Okay, fine. Oh, wait, no, bump it, no. Literally, that is exactly what it is. Literally, why? That's what democracy is. Every citizen is Pharaoh. Every citizen is Pharaoh. It's a multiplicity of Pharaoh because there's a collective Pharaohness systemically, but each citizen is Pharaoh. Every citizen is Pharaoh. Every citizen is Pharaoh. Every woman citizen is Pharaoh. So, for a prophet, a would-be prophet, or whatever, a wannabe prophet, or whatever kinfolk want to qualify it as, Moshe Rabbeinu, somebody who's living a righteous trot and living away from the ways of Egypt, Mitzrayim. But the prospect and the endeavor that I am on is marrying a woman who is Pharaoh, Pharaohess. I won't say Cleopatra, but a citizen, presuming she's a citizen, 18 years old, as conventional law solicits. She's Pharaoh. So it's a matter of convincing Pharaoh to marry Moshe Rabbeinu. Pharaohess. Let's not do the gender thing. Pharaohess. She's a citizen. She's Pharaohess. And that's what it is, because a woman who is a citizen, she's attached to that. She has to walk this walk. It's a matter of letting that go. And that's a big step, because particularly for families, all that, it's a big step. And in that process, there might be like, instead of like there are the curses, to be honest. But instead of that scenario per se, in terms of a man and woman marrying each other, prophet and pharaohess marrying each other, and we can say a prophetess and pharaoh, either way. That would not be the situation with myself, though. In that prospect of the prophet and pharaoh, pharaohess, I'll say, instead of like necessarily the curses per se, it's a matter of like the charismas, and pharaohess becomes enamored and adoring of the charisma of prophet, or the would-be prophet, wannabe prophet. And so Pharaohess, oh yeah, okay. But then afterwards, like maybe getting distance, after the meaty conversation goes a separate way, and then friends talk, what were you talking to such and such? Oh yeah, nah. And so we can say sobriety or just reversion into the murkiness of imperialism or whatever, and then change of heart. But then again, see and talk again and oh, charisma, yeah. But then change of heart. So, anyways, that's some of the experience, and there's no blame, there's no onus on that. For the would-be wannabe prophet, it's a matter of like, okay, find the way, um, find the solution, be it, do it. Don't cry, don't make excuses, don't crawl in a hole and soak. Try, buck up, man up, dial up. So, anyways, that's some of what is learned. Whilst the system works to actually cooperate with us, and this just means us, we see that the system is working diligently, honestly, as much as it can to work with us. And when I say system, I'm talking about system. I'm talking about the empire. I'm talking about imperialism. Why? Because it seems that imperialism recognizes there's a further phenomenon that is a challenge and a threat to life itself on this earth, particularly human civilization. And that's when we get into devil talk. Like the evilness that runs imperialism, and also ruins imperialism, at least the beings who are attached to imperialism. And so the leadership of imperialism loses itself. Like kinfolk are out their mind. Kinfolk, I've said before, I think, if I recall correctly, as we're nearing an hour on this joint, a vast number of kinfolk on this earth, particularly in, we say, nano civilization. A vast number of kinfolk within nano civilization are out of their right mind. Not necessarily absolutely, not necessarily 100%, significantly, to varying degrees, out of the right mind, not thinking straight, delusional. No, not delusional. We gotta be careful with that word. Delirious, drunk, off distraction, and lapse of concentration, and recognizing how significant concentration is. Yo, kinfolk came through today from the streets, smelling of stale urine, walking into the joint, all types of different, but is able to stay for a moment and continue on. And in doing that, how about this? When the kinfolk left, amidst the conditions and whatever challenges kinfolk experience in that process, after the kinfolk leaves, the space itself is much further quiet, much further calm, much further concentrated. Immediately from that kinfolk's presence, there is a peace that comes from the streets. There is a peace that comes from destitution, because there is an honesty within it. And amidst all the strategies of conquest and corruption, of convention, destitution provides a treasure. What about life? The ways of the Most High. Sublime. So, what were we talking about? Something about civilization. I was getting ready to segue into another joint. We were talking about relationships just a second ago. we're getting into societal talk. We're talking about the machine. So I was talking about machine and evil. So the machine seems to be seeing, whether it's AI, whether it's the scientists, whoever it may be, the machine seems to be seeing like what it's up against. I mentioned before the three things that invoke fear within the imperialism: angels, aliens, and AI. Now AI seems to be infused, so I don't know how. Maybe AI is a little bit of adjusted to being like simply an anomaly, because it seems like kinfolk are increasingly hyper attached to AI that there's not necessarily a fear, because AI seems to be supplanting whatever precipitated that experience within the imperialistic hierarchy. So, but that being said, something else takes AI's place in terms of being the fear factor. And again, that might just simply be the anomaly. How does that distinguish from the angels and the celestial, the otherworldly? Have to think about that. But in the meanwhile, we do observe there being some motivation, some genuine effort of the machine. I mentioned recently, like I might have to receive, put it this way. Now, before I say that, I'll say this. The machine making an effort of facilitating marriage, even a marriage involving myself. But there being, again, it's a continual process, and so the point for it though is to recognize, not to lambast the machine, we speak matter of factly, but not to spew vitriol, not to unload emotive angst or otherwise, because that feeds the chaos, that feeds the sinister of this realm. So the machine is very earthly. The machine is earthly. The machine is significantly run by the sinister, particularly the hierarchy. And I was saying kinfolk lose themselves. Well, first I said many kinfolk in nano-civilization are out their right minds, because it's delirious, it's a drunkenness, distraction, so much going into the mind, concentration, attention spans, and additionally kinfolk having difficulty concentrating and having conversation, distractions, interruptions, personal communication skills. Think I'm eccentric or whatever, and talking to this joint. Talking with people, a lot of commands, and then a question, and then a sorry. Like those are the two things. People giving commands, and then the next second saying sorry. And then continuing on, just matter of factly, not being very mindful, not seeming to be very mindful about what kinfolk are saying. Sorry is a sacred, solemn thing. Like there's a process, oftentimes offerings, sacrifices of animals just to say sorry. It's not something that's said in 0.5 seconds and continue on. Like, what did you do to be sorry? Think about that, because otherwise it loses its meaning. And that sorry is a sacred, necessary thing in this life. So, and it's not a matter of like, you should do this and you should do that and you should do this. Oh, sorry, I did it. But then you should do this. No, stop. Listen to what you're saying. That's a command I just said. Commands are authoritative. That's weight. That's huge. And when someone in that position of authority and weight makes an apology, that's huge. You can't just one back and forth. It's just. I remember 20 years ago when I'm in the throes of being locked up in psych wards and additionally mad. Through that process, and even I just mentioned this recently with loved ones, what I recognize is that, and this is somewhat of a new thing, but it's basically what I said before. What I recognize is that as much as like things are dirty things are done to me, what I recognize in a spiritual sense is that I had yet to cultivate a discipline on how to respond to nasty things. So what I observe is that certain things are done to me to provoke me, but in that provocation, as right as I may be, how I voice my response of frustration contributes, like I manifest further malaise that bounces back to me through the guise of convention, doctors, psychiatrists, the legal system, um, and even though it's all types of wrong, I manifest that through how I articulate the power of the words, yo. So 20 years ago, what I recognized even then, and sometimes we get lessons, we learn the answer, and we know it, but we have to like absorb it and process it and mature into it. And it may take a while, it may take years. But I remember, and again, 20 years ago, I remember this is what's shared with me at that moment. And when I say things like that, this is what's shared with me. Sometimes it's somebody says it to me. Sometimes we can say it's God speaking or God communicating through words, through thought, through inspiration, through prayer, through meditation, through samadhi, through davening, through salat. Things are communicated. So ultimately, it's the medium makes less a differentiation. It's just a matter, it all comes from God one way or the other. So it's just a matter of recognizing and giving appreciation for that. What is shared with me at that time 20 years ago is a wise person speaks knowing every word a wise person says becomes true. We can reduce that to simply saying that because there's a little bit of training wheels to that joint. And we can compact that statement or whatever by just simply saying this: a wise person speaks knowing every word becomes true. Plain and simple. We can just say every word becomes true. Right there, even that. Point is, whatever we say manifests the world around us. And it is an overwhelming truth. It can be very intimidating and scary to think, to recognize, to realize that what we say actually becomes true. Because to be that mindful of everything we say, every second of the day, everything we don't say actually happens. That's beyond the mind. And it's easier just to say what we want to say, do what we want to do, and not feel the repercussions accordingly. It's much easier to just placate ourselves with that delusion. However, when we experience those consequences, guess who we have to blame? Right there. As wrongful as it may be, however wrongful we think it is, well, what it is that we just have yet to acknowledge our own power. And that we actually had that power to do that by whatever we said or whatever we did, or even whatever we thought previously. Disciplining our mind, not just our actions and not just our words, but even our mind, what we think. Yes. It's necessary. Yes. It is possible. Let me tell it best as I can. So, a wise person speaks, knowing every word becomes true. And what I recognize is that 20 years ago when I'm going through those cycle words, and additionally, I'm responding to the injustices that I observe in life. I'm responding to the injustices that are done to me. And I respond by getting angry because I had been patient. And I played the game. I played the role. I did what was told of me to do. And I saw betrayal. I saw lies. I saw deceit. I saw corruption. And then I saw the gun turned on me like, yo, so what you gonna do? And I got angry. And that anger was the manifestation of further affliction towards myself. Until I got quiet. Shut up. Look, observe, study. You thought you were done because you finished all that school and all them degrees? You just starting to learn, brethren. Here's some study time. Lock up. Study. So, that was me talking to myself. Kind of, sort of. Anyways, point is that's it. So it's helpful to become disciplined on how we communicate. Ultimately, one of the things that's part of the nature of the grace and graciousness of the Most High is that there's a truth that exists beyond all our words. So even when we do things, and even when we do say things that we don't mean, or that we do let off a little bit, to recognize that there's a truth that exists beyond our words. The words manifest, but there's a greater truth that also manifests and guides and provides balance and forgiveness, flexibility, like the shui. So that helps to ease up being so overwhelmed in every second, being so, the word sinkiete, to be self-worried about everything, every little thing you say. Make sure precision can be over. What does it say? Precision can be excessive. So it's not a matter of being like, worried about every little thing we say. Yes, be mindful of what we say. Make sure what we say is true. Make sure what we say is with love. Make sure we say is with modesty and respect. And anything that we misspeak, like make sure it's as factual as we can think. If we're not sure, let's be honest about that and phrase it in a way, or at least provide that acknowledgement. I guess this was actually providing a purpose of light. It's blocking my armrest. It's kind of what we talk about. The words have purpose, and so we have to be mindful of it, but at the same time, there's a greater purpose too. So that's part of the grace. So, talking about machine, talking about the devil. I've talked before about like the servants of the devil and the servants of the saints of heaven. Like the saints of heaven need to work together, need to like put some organization together in this world, because the servants of the devil, the slaves of the devil, are like getting together and like are getting their diversity methodologies together and like gearing up for the next stage. And the saints are continually working, quietly working very often, but there's further necessity of like focusing on that. So that's just somewhat of a mindful kind of call out. I'm gonna throw this one in there. I don't intend to follow up on it at the moment, too tough, or explain it, but what I'll say is this. The children of the middle passage. I have to rephrase this. So, first of all, in this brief segment here, this is what it is. First thing is this. All things belong to the Creator, the Most High, Elohim, Allah, Tao, God. All things belong to Elohim. Elohim owns everything of earth, heaven, all creation. So there's that. Now that being said, in the context and in the illusion of civilization, where there are these pretenses of ownership, land, territory, titles, and all this other stuff, here's something for consideration. The children of the Middle Passage. The children of the Middle Passage own the Atlantic Ocean until justice is properly reached. So, until justice is properly reached, the children of the Middle Passage own the Atlantic Ocean. Plain and simple. I'm going to leave it at that. One thing I share as an addendum is this. Many may question, how does oneself own waters that continually move? Very proper question. And there's another that balances this, which is, how do waters that continually move become one's own self? So that's what we have to share on that joint, on that segment. Returning to the notion of imperialism. Anybody talking about system is imperialism. Anybody talking about solution as system or within system, that's imperialism. And I don't mean to be doing a binary of imperialism, non-imperialism, or whatever where we use as a counterbalance to this experience of imperialism. And we're not saying, am I saying, no, we're not saying, we're not equating imperialism with evil. Imperialism is a part of life. Ancient, thousands of years. There ebbs and flows, there rises and falls. There's only one world imperialist system, so the notion of like it just being a Western thing or just a U.S. thing, that's propaganda. There's one world system. There's one world imperialist system, with love and peace to all kinfolk of the world imperialist system. That's China, Russia, Africa, the Middle East, Islam, Judaism, the United States, Europe, Latin America, all of it. All the conventional constructs of it, because what I just referenced exists beyond the world system too. But the world system is an amalgamation of all these elements. So it's not just one part or one region, it's a collective. And greed, hatred, and delusion, it's a systemic methodology of greed, hatred, delusion that utilizes conquest and corruption, or that practices conquest and corruption. And this is not a high horse speech. Nobody's innocent. Not even nobody's innocent. How about that? But just recognizing the game for what it is. So, sanctuary, absolute sanctuary is not found in China. Absolute sanctuary is not found in the United States. Absolute sanctuary is not found in Africa or Europe or the Middle East, Arabia, Yerushalayim, or elsewhere. Absolute sanctuary is found in none of these places, with all due respect. The greatest sanctuary is found within discipline, wherever one finds oneself. The greatest sanctuary is a practice of peace and sharing and chastity and honesty and sobriety. Wada. Wherever one is and with whom one finds oneself. That's the sanctuary, that's the solution. And it's beneficial to recognize that. Now we're going to share something that's a little bit charged right here. It's a little bit tenacious. And there's a purposefulness within this. A very genuine purposefulness within this. Hour and a half into this. So you're talking about, this is the time we're supposed to be getting up and praying. Excuse me one second. Check and see if we have any guests. Okay. So here it is. We're going to use some. This is funny. It's not funny. It's interesting, actually. It's notable. And this is part of the reason why we're sharing this. How much, like, the politically correct spectrum has become entrenched in certain ways. And the primary reason, or the initial reason for utilizing these words right now is basically just alliteration. Basically, but at the same time, it's like, well, that's not the best word to say. But then it's like, well, hold up, nah. This is what we mean. This is what we're talking about, and we're not saying this with the intention of being hateful, because any way we say in a genuine way, it's going to be speaking of this in a criticizing way. And it's interesting how speaking of something in a criticizing way, and I'm going to mention what I'm talking about in a minute, God willing, speaking about a certain thing in a criticizing way, at this moment is perceived as politically incorrect. Oh, that's inappropriate. You shouldn't talk about it. Wait, hold up. What are you talking? Huh? And I'll say what I'm talking about now. So it's actually just like a context to understand civilization and society at the moment. And it's with three things, three phenomena: sissies, slaves, and psychopaths. That's the trifecta of society at this moment, what we observe: sissies, slaves, and psychopaths. Now, obviously, what I'm talking about is, oh, you can't say the word sissies. Wait, is that not what we're talking about? We're talking about people, effeminate men, who are cowardly and vicious. Now, sissy is a derogatory, hateful word. It's mean. It's disrespectful. I grew up, kinfolk would say that all the time, and it was no thing. Maybe not as much as people would say the N-word. Oh, what, you can't say the N-word, but you can say sissy? Sissy is talking about a behavior that somebody finds disagreeable, like calling somebody a drunk. Now, calling somebody a drunk might be considered disrespectful, but if that's what we're talking about, if somebody's getting drunk on a regular basis, yelling at people and everything else like that, we can call them an alcoholic. We can call them something else, but we're talking about that behavior and the detrimental effects of that. When we say the N-word, it doesn't matter who or what that person does. That person, what is being derogatorily referenced is that person's heritage, that person's ancestors, and additionally, people who had nothing to do with whatever that person is or saying or doing at that moment. And so that's part of the inaccuracy of the N-word and the further dehumanizing things. When we talk about behavior, we can reason about that. Now, again, certain words are like, if we say hoe or slut, that's disrespectful, and it's charged. And further, it may fall along the same lines as sissy. So we can reason about that. That being said, like I said, the reason for thinking about the word initially was that the first word, we could say slave. Well, you say slave, that's a derogatory word. That's literally a dehumanized word. But at the same time, we're talking about people who are subservient and dehumanized. So the point is, I mean, the whole politically correct game is hypocritical and for lack of a better word, I went for an hour over said without cussing, but it's bullshit because it's political correctness is still imperialism, and it's just pretenses of etiquette and niceties, whilst kinfolk continue committing atrocities against each other, but just smiling and being polite with each other. So there's legitimacy within the pretenses within political correctness of being mindful, considerate, and respectful, and even loving towards others. But to get caught up in the names without addressing the actualities, that's bullshit, and that's just covering it up, and that's actually further atrocity. So that being said, we're continuing on with saying sissies, slaves, and psychopaths, because what we have to say is describing the conditions of society, what we observe, that the ascendant, that the effeminate men are increasingly the populated demographic within the hierarchy of society. Just seeing how kinfolk are conditioned, how men how adult males are conditioned to be increasingly effeminate, particularly as a way of not being perceived as hostile or aggressive towards each other, in order to be able to learn the ways of society, the ways of manipulation, the ways of being a higher ranked laborer, third class citizen within society. It requires being able to communicate with each other, even in social informal things, without being perceived as aggressive or a competitor or otherwise. And that is increasingly effeminate. And so those who are effective in that receive the training, receive the knowledge, receive the credentials, receive the authorizations, receive the privileges, but at the cost of masculinity, and become further effeminate, even practicing effeminate ways to the point of LGBTQ behavior. There's a spectrum, but the general categorization is sissiness. And this is not hate. This is everybody's going to heaven. Everyone is equal value. Everyone is equal child of God. This is just talking about behavior and the detriments that are caused, because that the consequence of that that systemic effeminization of men creates a lot of imbalances, insecurities, and resentments and hostilities and like latent just frustrations. People, one word that's similar to this is they call it incels. Yeah, incels. Oh, and I may be accused of being an incel myself. So that's part of the experience, the phenomenon of sissiness in the world system, the world imperialist system at this moment, because the sissies are becoming bosses with that third class bosses within the world imperialist system. So that's one thing. Now we have the slaves. The slaves there's a gamut of slaves, from women, children, to men. But what is observed is that the masculine, many of the men who are masculine within the imperial system are the ones who are enslaved by sissies. And Train Spotting says this 30 years ago. And the sissies, I have to be mindful because I don't say that word. I don't use that word, so just might be mindful of that. But the effeminate men who learn the ways of society, learn the ways of statecraft, medicine, science, technology, and get the credentials, and then with those credentials have the auspices of slaves to do the enforcement of the plebeians below. And so the slaves are, by and large, the masculine men of society, to differing ranks, who are allowed to still be masculine, oftentimes being hyper sexually active to satisfy as many women as possible, to get just to have some experience of company and physical touch of a masculine man, but on the low. But at the same time, those masculine men are slaves at the bidding of the effeminate men. Some masculine men might get married and continue their work. Essentially, I'm speaking so crass and whatever. I'm just trying to. I do my best to just speak plainly, and a lot of it is nasty stuff. So, and this is not everybody. This is not across the board. It's not absolutely everything. But it's speaking about a normalcy within civilization worldwide. So, the masculine men, slaves, knowing slaves, like knowing it's not going to reach the line, and if they step out of line, if they go beyond what they're allowed to do, boom, consequences, because things are so orchestrated or whatever accordingly, and so can be married, can have children, optimally slaves, like in an optimal way. and that's part of the compromise. That's part of the sacrifice. That's part of the what kinfolk give up to get those fringe benefits. So there's that. Now, and then people find their place in that hierarchy. Women find a place in that hierarchy. And that's the fourth element in this equation, is women. To get to that in a second, God willing. So this is the kinfolk who are within the system, and I don't mean to speak of this like in a like an accusatory, like binary kind of thing. We're all enveloped in it. Even kinfolk who are out of the system are connected with it one way or the other. So that's the two, first of all. Now, one of the things that kind of is an X factor, an uncontrollable thing, are the psychopaths. The psychopaths in that system of just the sissies, and I'm saying it because it's the S's, and I have to be mindful of this because I'm manifesting this against myself. So I'm going to pay for it one way or the other. If you don't like what I'm saying, don't worry, I'm going to pay for it. So you don't have to worry about that. All things happen by the grace of the Most High. So if I'm being excessively disrespectful in devaluation and dehumanizing, causing kinfolk undue pain by what I'm saying, I will pay for it. And I do hear myself being further regular in how I say that, so I'm being mindful of this. I'm trying to be consistent because alliteration helps with memorization of the concepts. So that was the immediate thing that occurs. So with those first two elements of the effeminate men and the enslaved masculine men, there's order. Like there's a very effective order that even evolves and adapts in addition. But there are a couple of elements that throw a monkey wrench into the system. One is like traditional methodologies that exist beyond just like the mathematics of science, nature, the spiritual, and also the psychopaths. The psychopaths are kinfolk who have similar knowledge in certain ways as the effeminate men do about how the game works and everything, are able to like keep a distance, like the jackals, or like the panther, or like the jaguar, even like the tiger. Just dolo, away from the organized ways of the pack of the lions and the hyenas and everything. And then just like, come in and scoop something up when need be. Lay low. And even when the system is aware of who the psychopaths are, there's little that the system is able to do, because if the system endeavors to like annihilate the psychopath or whatever directly and expediently, the psychopath has defenses and can like that whole element of that system right there that's endeavoring to do that. The psychopath knows ways of counterbalancing that. And meanwhile, the psychopath does nasty things to like children and women and men within the system, here and there. And so that's a third element within world imperialist civilization, or the world imperialist system. And one of the reasons why the system needs additional help to deal with psychopaths and deal with other types of threats, nature, spiritual, otherworldly, and further. And one of the motivations why the system why the system endeavors to work with kinfolk, including myself, including ourselves, to find treaty solutions and agreements accordingly. Now, a fourth element to this is like a tenacious element. It's something that's we got to work on this still. And that is sterile women. Sterile women. Oh, knee. This is a painful thing, because we know how much further pervasive it is in this generation than it is like just a few generations ago. But just women, particularly young women, middle-aged women, that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about elders specifically. We're talking about young women who are intentionally sterile. That's probably the better way of describing it, a further accurate way. Intentionally sterile women. Women who proactively sterilize one's own self to render a woman's self unable to procreate, at least for a short period of time, or a near-term period of time, for like a year, whatever the different methodologies are. But there's, I mean, just the detriments are catastrophic, to be honest. That's no hyperbole. That's no cap. That's no, what's the other term? It's not no cap. It's no hype. No cap. It's catastrophe. Because one, that's just a green light for having sex. Like, whether it's sex with a committed boyfriend, even a husband. It's like sex knowing that like it's not leading to like life. It's sex for the sake of sex. And particularly when a woman is not married, and particularly when she's having further numerous partners or whatever, and using particularly sex as a way of advancing her earthly needs. That's harlotry. That's being a slut. Even when she's not getting paid for it. Whatever she's getting from it, that's what it is. So, and that's not shade. That's not hate. That's facts. So, anyways, that's one element of it. The other element is that when it becomes normalized, when it becomes expected of women to do that, like when it becomes almost described as being irresponsible not to do that. When that becomes the trope, that's what teachers are teaching girls, 12-year-old girls, 11-year-old girls, 15-year-old girls, 17-year-old girls, 20-year-old girls, 30-year-old girls. When leadership within society, government leaders, family elders, and additionally, are telling that to young women, young sisters. It's a culture of futility. It's a culture of essentially nihilism. And one of the counter criticisms or arguments is, oh, you just want women to be slave and just be barefoot and pregnant, da 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 da. Is that extreme? Like, is that the necessity of challenging the concerns of sterility, intentional sterility, by just going to that extreme? And in that scenario also, what's wrong with being barefoot and pregnant? But without delving or responding to that joint, it's just recognizing that it's healthy, it's natural for a woman to have her menstruation. It's natural and healthy for a woman to be available for procreation. It's natural and healthy for a man to be available for procreation, and not to intentionally sterilize himself, even in utilizing a condom. OD, what? Yes. When in that culture of sterility, when the women are intentionally sterile, the mindsets of women become hardened. The tenderness, the nurturing that society needs evaporates. It becomes that balance of effeminate men running the system significantly, and sterile women being the counterbalance of that authoritarianism. Sterile women who are losing a sense of motherliness, of caring about life, and are looking at things machinedly, just like blinders, and strategically calculating, callous. And effeminate men who are significantly filled with cowardice and fear and hatred and jealousy and resentment and knowledge. And that's where the laws are established, and that's where rule of law is organized, even when that rule of law is through the guise of medicine and pharmaceuticals. So that's what we observe with society this moment. The trifecta of sissies, slaves, and psychopaths. And then the fourth element of sterile sisterhood. And how that translates into societal tropes and propaganda and guidance and laws that are unhealthy for people, that are unhealthy for life, unhealthy for relationships and otherwise. So this is a lot of negative stuff. I'm addressing the problem. I'm addressing the thing. So let's work towards solutions. Let's not just be the naysayers on this joint. So one other thing I'll say, and I'm about to call some kinfolk out, because this is one of the things that precipitates this joint. And now we're working on battery life at this point, and we're cutting into prayer and meditation again. All right, we're calling out some kinfolk. One kinfolk that we called out is the overlap. The kinfolk of the overlap. We just downloaded a video, watched it. It was a watch along. I think it was the first one the kinfolk did, and it was like, wow. The show is so popular that the kinfolk can just record the brethren watching a match, and just that's a thing. Like, not even show the match, but just show how the men react to the match. I know that's a thing on the internet, but it's a watch along. Presumably, kinfolk are supposed to watch along with it. But when kinfolk are just actually watching the watch along, like after it's already been recorded, and additionally, it's like, people actually do that? People actually watch this? I guess yes, because I was one of them. I downloaded it, watched it, and I'm like, okay, brethren are watching football. But then, I kind of fast forward just to see if there's anything else to that, because this is the first time I see this on the overlap, which I've been watching over a year, I think, at this point, pretty much on a regular basis. It's kind of been like the news report for myself in certain ways. When I get back online now, I can't do it because we're not watching the overlap no more. Why? Because this. When watching the watch along, the watch after watch along, there was the occasion when I'm calling out names. Love and peace to all the brethren. Love and peace to Gary Neville. Love and peace to Roy Keane. Love and peace to Ian Wright. Love and peace to Jamie Carragher. And I think I got all the names correct. But this is what we observe. At some point during the part of the watch along, I think they were watching like two matches at the same time, if I recall the banter beforehand on previous episodes. So it seems like Jamie Carragher's team, Liverpool, was playing as one of the preliminary matches before the featured one, which was Ian Wright's Arsenal versus Roy Keane's and Gary Neville's Manchester United. So when watching the Liverpool match, at some point the Liverpool scored, and when that happens, Jamie Carragher gets excited, starts yelling, "Oh, da 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 da!" Okay, that's fun. That's that. But then he starts to like gesticulate and gyrate, and he jumps in front of Gary Neville's face, who's sitting on a couch. They're all sitting on couches. He jumps on the couch with his feet on the couch and his front towards Gary, who's sitting down, and he puts his groin in Gary Neville's face and starts gyrating and says says some vulgar, like homosexual, taunting things. Now, that's understood in sports. Brethren say certain things, smacking on the ass and everything, and there's comedic skits about that, like, yo, what you doing in that locker room with all that da 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 da. But people tend not to question it too much because that's the epitome of masculinity within society. So there's some liberties that are afforded, or non-questions, because, no, he doing his thing. Look how many women he got. No question him. But at the same time, no. We're going to question. We're not going to question that. We're going to communicate concerns. So all the brethren that I listed are like legendary athletes, legendary footballers. However, that being said, when Jamie Carragher and that just thing we just saw, gets on that couch, starts gyrating and putting his groin in Gary Neville's face, and for like 30 seconds to a minute, going on and on, yelling, and taunting, vulgarity. No on Jamie Carragher's part, no on Gary Neville's part for just sitting. He's supposed to be like the leader of the podcast or whatever. So for him just to sit there and take it, no. For the show to present that, even after the fact, after it's recorded, and to upload that, no. So right there, it shows how the whole thing is suspect. For that to make it onto what's presented, suspect. Um, and it just reveals. It's like, it becomes too obvious. Like, yeah, nah, we see what's going on here, and nah. And we're not making any specific accusations about homosexuality or whatever. That in and of itself, what was shown, nah, that's not the appropriate thing to do. It's definitely not the appropriate thing to show to a general audience, particularly young brethren, young boys. In addition, no, it's bad. It's unhealthy. We're not going to say bad. It's unhealthy. It's extremely unhealthy. And so for that, can't watch the show. Off the show. And to give some further, the thing is, we saw the evidence beforehand, leading up to that. The crotch shots on the fan debate. If you watch how that's framed, like the middle of the screen is this crotches of the experts who are leading and moderating the fan debate. That's not by accident. The whole film industry, all the media is unhealthy. All the media. What I'm doing right now is unhealthy. All the media, all the internet, all television, all cable, it's unhealthy. All of it is unhealthy. The internet is unhealthy. Now there's degrees. Some things are further unhealthy than others. There's some benefit within some of it. All of it is unhealthy. Beneficial recognized. All of it. I'm contributing to unhealthiness right now by doing this. With all the 2 views or whatever that may be officially on this journey. It's unhealthy. So when we recognize that, we can see like the things that are significantly unhealthy, and like we should be very mindful in keeping distance from. And what I just described in terms of the overlap, what was seen the overlap, that's one of those things. As painful as it is and disappointing, because now we got to think about, we got to wake up early in the morning and find ourselves another podcast, because like I said, I watched that regularly for over a year. And but again, I have to hold myself to account, because ain't no blame on the kinfolk. We saw it beforehand. We saw the signs of it, the hints, the jokes, the things here and there. When it was further in a mainstream audience and not as popular, not seemingly as self-perceiving as invincible, or not saying invincible, but just like being able to get away with certain things, still worrying about like censorship and review and this and the other. But now, once getting presumably a certain amount of popularity, whatever, less worried about what people think. Oh, we got numbers, we can do this, that, and the other. We don't have to worry about sponsorship, blah, blah, blah. Might even improve. No. So we saw the hints beforehand. The crotch shots on the fan debate. And to be honest, the brethren Ian Wright's scarf, and additionally, we saw that whole trope about Ian Wright being the black brethren whose masculinity you cannot question when kinfolk are of European ancestry, because he's black. That's like the epitome of masculinity. The black athlete, muscle and everything else like that, scores goals. So he can afford to be the emotional one. He can afford to be the childlike one. He can afford to be the affectionate one. He can afford to be the one who wears the scarf and is talking about fashion and lives a lit suspect in certain ways, because he's got children and he's a stand-up brethren. He's a beautiful brethren. Honestly, that's no cap. That's facts. Honest, he's a beautiful brethren. The things he shares are extremely valuable. The compassion that he shares is extremely valuable. But at the same time, there's a little bit of questionality. And then when that questionality is compounded with what we see in other things, another example is when they do the tours now. So they're getting popular. They do the tours. They're overlooking Italy. And then they get the ass shot. What I mean by that, they're standing looking over this beautiful view of whatever Turin or whatever city they're in Italy. But at the same time, the camera is showing their rear ends, and they're all bent over a ledge. And all 4 brethren, Jamie Carragher, Ian Wright, Roy Keane, I think there was another brethren, maybe 4. Maybe it was just 3, but I think it was 4. All the brethren there, though, it's the rear of them. They're bending over the ledge. And it's like, it's a framed shot. Beautiful landscape or whatever, and 4 legendary athletes bending over and showing their rears to the camera. That's not by accident. The film industry, particularly since the days of Ladri di Biciclette, how about that? Italia, one of the greatest films, so-called, of all time. Ladri di Biciclette. 1949, 1950 something, 70 years ago, um, filmed by somebody who's publicly known as being homosexual, featuring a scene where the boy urinates in the street, and it not being shown in the United States because the United States is like, no, we're not showing that. How shots are framed so that the audience's attention is necessarily focused on certain parts of the anatomy. That's not by accident. It's so much of film, when you study and you recognize it, when you learn it, is extremely intentional and it is extremely subliminal. Fight Club, splicing. Now that's a fictional depiction or whatever, but it's showing itself literally of how the game works. Cutting up the film, putting in the thing of pornography. Now again, that was a fictional kind of articulation, but it's showing just some of the mentality, some of the techniques that are available and that are actually utilized in many ways within film as a regular thing. It just is too many to name. That's just some of it. But then also how it gets to the point of such prominence where mainstream films, as I said before, like Mi Familia, literally show children naked. That's pedophilia. Straight up, literally. If somebody is caught with a DVD or a download of Mi Familia, very technically, legitimately, that person will be charged and convicted of pedophilia. Because in that film, rated R by the motion picture industry, features a boy, maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, and a scene where the boy gets up butt naked, showing his penis, dancing on a table in front of a group of adults. Facts. That's pedophilia. And the fact that it's artistic and it's comedic. It's sanctioned by his own parents, and additionally, somehow it makes it. Now this was back in the 90s. There are elements of that within the film industry. So the point is that little subtle things that people kind of overlook and don't think, and they don't mean that. No, it's exactly meant. It's intentional, and part of the intention is to dull the mind, to dull the resistance, to dull the shock of oh, you shouldn't be doing that. But just like again, the hyenas sniffing around and taking a bite here and there, and that bite right now is cognitive. It's dulling people's senses to be delirious, to be non-thinking, and just to just go with whatever is shown. And even to the point where I watch the overlap and see those things, hints of that here and there, until it gets further and further blatant, until just this past day, and just like, okay, that's it, can't do that. Now I have to think about how much I support my new club of Salford City, that's owned partly by Gary Neville and his brother Phil Neville. That's another situation because it's a different field of endeavor, but at the same time it's the same kinfolk. And if we're not going to support that because the kinfolk behave in a questionable way, that's going to be a whole lot of things that we're not supporting in this society and in this civilization and in this imperialist system. So that's all you have to be mindful of. At the very least, the overlap, that's too blatant, too obvious, and it's too unnecessary. Don't need it. Too tough. It's extremely valuable. Again, this is part of the nostalgia of my own self, being a Manchester United supporter for over 25 years, class of '92. This is it's almost to the point of being spiritual. And otherwise, I get to meet kinfolk in this life, but the whole kinfolk, Paul Scholes, David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, the Neville brothers, Roy Keane being an elder, Eric Cantona, all that, even before Cristiano Ronaldo. That's what the overlap is in my experience, because that's Manchester, the city of Manchester, 1997. Actually, I'm talking about city of Manchester, 1996. When I start supporting Manchester United. So it's not easy to let go of the overlap, but at the same time, it's not necessary. As beneficial as beneficial. I can also talk about the dreams that we have about kinfolk that speak to this experience as well, because the dreams speak to us. The dreams communicate, speak to us. when we pay attention. So, anyways, it gets to this point. Love and peace to all the brethren. Love and peace to Gary Neville. Love and peace to Phil Neville. Love and peace to Jamie Carragher. Love and peace to Ian Wright. Love and peace to Roy Keane, Wayne Rooney, Paul Scholes, all the kinfolk. But we just can't do the over at this point. Now, that's one thing. One other thing also to point out is like, as much as people might say, oh, it's Jamie Carragher, he's just the wild one, he did that, everything, that was just inappropriate, he was out of pocket. No. Because when you know the gang, first of all, like, the ones who are running it are out of the scene. Many of the kinfolk who are running it are out of this life. That's the nature of the manipulation. It's nasty. But in the scene, in the immediacy, it's very often the quiet one who seems to be the victim, who's actually the mastermind, who the one who seems to be the weakest is actually Kaiser Sosa. How about that? Oh, you heard me now. Gary Neville, the one who seems to be playing himself, doing all the commercials and everything, the one who's too scared to jump off the high dive, the one who's the butt of all the jokes, just absorbing all those digs, being the pushpin, making the bank, making the connections, making the maneuvers. So when he's sitting on the couch and Jamie Carragher is in his face, you beta male. Okay, that's the nature of the sissiness. Absorbing that, absorbing the abuse, and knowing how to parlay that in the imperialism. Because that's the nature, and that's what's provided through democracy, where there is no king. It's all queens. In the controlling party. So, that's no hate. Love and peace to everybody. Love and peace to Gary Neville. Love and peace to all effeminate males. Love and peace to all LGBTQ males. What is recognized, and I think LGBTQ kinfolk can recognize this as well. We don't have hatred. We might speak a little bit flippantly. We might speak a little bit too, maybe somewhat disrespectfully. We recognize that. It's our best to address very difficult conditions that few others are addressing, and many of those who do address it are doing it without love and without respect or consideration, at least what we share. So we're not trying to say ourselves better. The point is this, that we recognize that the effeminate males, even male LGBTQ kinfolk, the most flamboyant, flaming kinfolk, are striving, nasty striving, to be righteous in this life, to be even men in this life, whatever a man is to be, but striving to be the best kinfolk can be amidst the conditions, because we also recognize that kinfolk who get into this position of effeminateness and otherwise, or even atrocities and slave or whatever, it's because of affliction. It's because of abuse. It's because of tenacious atrocities that's been done to kinfolk's self, oftentimes since long time. And just like gangsters, Tupac and anybody else get caught up in the game and have difficulty seeing any way out except this. So, that being said, what we're mindful of and we pray is that we are mindful of this, and we pray it further continues, that brethren who are immersed within that experience of LGBTQ, feminism, and whatever other names are attributed to it, that such brethren are able to recognize that what we share is not from a matter of hate. It's not a matter of condemnation. It is a matter of calling out, particularly for other younger brothers, young boys, young men who are trying to wrestle and find out path and guidance, so that young brethren can have further awareness of what is healthy and what is unhealthy. That's one of the reasons why we speak in the way that we do. And we endeavor to do this again without condemning, without even being disrespectful or dehumanizing. And we observe in many ways how a number of brethren are able to see this and see our heart, and how we call things out, we call the behavior out, we call the techniques and the methodologies and the strategies out, we call culture and the expectations and the manipulations out, we call all of that out, but we do not condemn any brethren. And what we actually do is we see brethren striving, we see brethren even seeing us and actually taking steps away from that life, away from the corruption of others and the manipulation of others. Because your brethren is a genius in figuring out people and pulling strings. And we observe quiet, because that's the nature of the game, quiet and subtle to the sublime, and even to the tacit and telepathic on those levels. We see the brethren, and I'm talking about brethren specifically, particularly. And I can talk about sistren too, but right now for the brethren, the effeminate brethren in addition, we see brethren taking steps, because we know, like when brethren make that decision to like get out that game of the LGBTQ scene or whatever, that's like a hyena trying to walk out of being a hyena. And the other hyena's like, yo, where you think you going? What you trying to do? No, we can see at night. You're not creeping at night. It's tenacious, and we know that. And we know we have an awareness of risk brethren run, of being vulnerable, of like getting away from the protections of a pack, and like navigating the wilderness without those powers. So we respect those steps, and we're humbled by the brethren who have the courage to take those steps. And we see that. And we don't want to hype it up too much, because we can only speak from our own tribe. So there's certain things that we can't speak on in terms of experientially, but we can say what we see, and we respect. We respect brethren who are even thinking about that. We respect brethren who even slow up on hurting others. Whatever it is for the benefit of the well-being of others, for the well-being of one's own self. Respect and support. And who are we? It's the Most High, and it's the universe that respond. Most compassionate, most beneficent. All thanks and praise. So we see that. Now with the sistren. The sterile sistren, the intentionally sterile sistren, we see them steps too. The same thing, the wolf pack, taking a step away. The second she-wolf, the third she-wolf or whatever, amidst the matriarch and the he-wolves. Where you think you going? We see at night. For the sistren who are immersed in LGBTQ, what we see again is steps. Like sistren, I mean, wait, that's still the man. Yeah, no, he's still doing the man things, but at the same time, like, there's something further trustworthy. What we observe within LGBTQ sistren, and even just the intentional sterile sistren, is like ultimate level machinery, knowing the game and working the game of, particularly of democracy, where there is no king. The institutions, once having a knowledge about how the institutions work, that's it, done. The women got it now. It's nice knowing you, men. That's it. But in those conditions, the women are competing against each other, and again, it's tenacious. And trying to step out of that, again, it's beyond getting jumped out the game. Where you think you going? But at the same time, when we see sistren pausing and saying, hold up, compassion, There's a plausibility to that benevolence. There's a plausibility to that empathy. There's a trustworthiness. Let's give this an attempt. Let's see how this one time goes. Let's see how that one goes. Okay, then decent that one. Let's try again. Let's see if it happens again. Okay, we're seeing some regularity. Oh, slipped up a little bit. Okay, well, there's a track record. Let's see how that goes. We observe sistren who have their eyes fixed and are ready to persecute without compassion, without pity, because that's what the rules are. That's what women are empowered with through those rules. But then we see, oh, wait a minute, here's something that's outside of what we've learned. And there's an ear to hear, at least a little further. After sistren have been raped by fathers and uncles and brothers and cousins and teachers and clergy and police and doctors and nurses and therapists and all that. Betrayal after betrayal, I trust to the point, like, it's just a matter of like turning the mind numb and just going through the abuse. We know what it is to be raped regularly. And in that mindset, bump everybody. I don't give a fuck. We know that. But then when being shown, wait, here's somebody, they're not perfect, but they're at least showing something else. That pain of trust again. Of a wee bit of vulnerability again. All right. There's another kinfolk we calling out. It's for a different reason, different situation, whatever. But still, we're in 2 hours now. Wada binga, wada ba. All right, 7 o'clock. Still got some battery though. We're nearing a point of wrapping this joint up, the complete joint for this moment, I guess. But we're still calling on another brethren, and this is brethren. To be honest, it's not a class of '92 situation, but this is a brethren I find out about probably about maybe 3 years ago, thereabouts. I'm gonna say his name. I'm saying names at the moment. So again, this is a very different situation, but the brethren's name is Daniel Dumbrill. And this is not hate towards him. Peace and blessings to Daniel Dumbrill. Peace and blessings to all his family, all his loved ones and kinfolk. But we have to call this out because it's beneficial for learning purposes. And this is no like hype and whatever else. But we're just calling. It's very appropriate to call this out because it's a little bit of a next level type of thing, and it's beneficial to call it out for that reason. Particularly again for young men, young women who are maybe a little bit older, at least teenagers or thereabouts, but like learning the ways of the world and trying to figure out who to listen to amidst all the different types of lies and hype and propaganda, and like hearing some game that sounds like, yo, this sounds decent. We're sharing this for that purpose of those who have that. It might be a smaller number of kinfolk with that type of mindset or whatever, but at the same time, it's very valuable. So we're going to share what we observe accordingly. So we find out about the brethren Daniel Dumbrill a few years ago, again, doing one of those searches of just mixed heritage type of stuff, whatever. And one of his videos, he does an interview with the brethren who's mixed, and that was the topic for that particular podcast. So that was the introduction to his podcast about 3 years ago, thereabouts. So since then, like, okay, he shares some of his story. He's mixed. To be honest, I have difficulty to remember what his specific mix is. I think he's of South Asian ancestry and something else, not Chinese. And I just say that because it factors into what the situation is. That's some of his heritage. Born and raised in Canada, currently lives in China with his wife, who is Chinese, and have children. But basically, the podcast is just him. I don't know if he's ever shown his children or wife on the podcast through the years, to my knowledge, and he hasn't put it up too much recently, or until recently. I think he's had a revamp. Now I think his business, his 9 to 5 joint, is actually running a bar. So right there, I mean that's not a big thing or whatever, but again, when we talk about like the solutions, somebody who's running a bar, like that's part of that system. That's not like ethical. It's not ethics based kind of thing. It's a recreational thing, and it's a recreational thing that's comparatively lucrative, particularly when one knows how to do it. And so, because of that, whatever politics and philosophies a person is articulating, and it's how intelligent everything else it sounds. At the end of the day, that person is getting bank off of people going to a bar, and people who are doing regular jobs, whatever, paying money to go to the bar and maybe have the philosophies or whatever else, but they're still, it's all part of the imperialism. So we have to always do that. Anytime kinfolk are talking about their politics and philosophy, yo, how do they eat? Where do they live? How do they cover this, that, and the other? Because that's what says much further about what a person actually believes in, beyond all this, whether they're a professor or whatever, a pontiff, a podcast, or whatever, professors, pontiffs, and podcasts, whatever it is. Where do they get their source, their materiality from? So that's what I'm aware of. That's what we're aware of in terms of the brethren Daniel Dumbrell. Now that being said, okay, qualified. It ain't gotta be perfect or whatever. Perfect. Look at us, all so pejorative, condescending, whatever. Um, I'm tired now as the day is beginning. So after watching the first one with the mixed heritage, see what he talks about in terms of politics. Talks about living in China. Talks about the corruption of the Western civilization. Well, not Western civilization, but Western society, particularly the United States. And him speaking as a Canadian, so maybe he has further like space to do that. So okay, well that sounds interesting game, but at the same time we've seen enough about life not to get all caught up in it. But at the same time, particularly him coming from mixed heritage thing and living in China. All right, we listen. So through the years, we see a number of podcasts periodically. Now, the recent joint, he interviews a young brethren who's of European ancestry, of United States kinfolk. Now, at this point, already we've seen enough about what's been presented from the brethren to just not have a lot of expectation. But now it's a matter of like, okay, we have to be mindful because we see like the next little game being run here, and we're gonna do our best to like articulate what that is. Who does we? Who does we? What we observe is, um, well, in this recent podcast, the brethren is 20, the brethren being interviewed, who's of European ancestry, is like basically going to China, talking about socialism, and studying how it works in the China, and talking about the criticisms of the U.S. system and politics and disappointments here and there, this and the other. So it's a lot of the typical youthful trope. It seems to be an intelligent brother. You have to be mindful of like any latent or semblance of criticism towards young brother, because young brethren are fast, and particularly young brethren who got like strong minds. Be careful, because they can come back, and even if they're not saying anything, they can make somebody else just look all types of messed up. So you got to be careful about the criticisms, not to be shy or whatever, but yo, just be mindful, because yo, you're asking for kinfolk who just come out swinging. So that being said, what we are aware of is this kind of trope, which is young brethren have a little bit of well, have a little bit of like enthusiasm, energy, have a lot of intelligence, have some learning, have some knowledge about Western civilization, not about world civilization, have perhaps all very often, if they're politically active, less knowledge about languages of other nations, and so have the spiel and the spewing is basically just from the European Eurocentric context that they've had schooling on, and maybe done the reading, vociferous reading, voracious reading through the years. But the people who are referenced by and large are all Westerners, English, United States, maybe some Deutschland or whatever, maybe delving into the philosophers of the past century or two or whatever, but not getting into the classics. When we talk about civilization and society and everything, and even talking about China, like in the conversation I watched just a second ago, which precipitates this, there's no mention of Dao Te Ching, there's no mention of I Ching, there's no mention of Lin Yu, there's no mention of Minsa. Like it's all about European socialism and how it's practiced within China. And so to have and talking about geopolitics, and so talking about geopolitics is such a limited frame of reference. I mean, it's beneficial to be civilizational, particularly when talking about geopolitics, because geopolitics is a very nascent phenomena. And if that's going to be the extent of the context of conversation, it's extremely limited, it's extremely myopic, because it's not looking at the long run of things and where it goes. And so it can be extremely intelligent and articulate and specific about the philosophers within that very, very narrow myopic scope of the past 100 years, and reference all these different books and cite the pages and everything else like that. But there's very little context of understanding the long-term thing. And because that, again, just in terms of like a pragmatic, genuine conversation, it's like you're not willing to think or look or discuss or address these bigger items because you just don't know it, and you don't want to recognize that because that deflates the ego and sense of authority. So it's just like an intrinsic latent dismissiveness of like the most relevant things to talk about. So anyways, that's the trope. That's for the young bread, and that's also for Daniel Dunbar, because of all this talk politics, I haven't heard him talk too much about those things I just mentioned, just like civilization, things that are over 200 years old, things that exist before the U.S. Constitution and otherwise, which shows a certain latent bias, actually, ironically, towards the presumption of the continuation of imperialism, particularly U.S. core, the imperial, quote-unquote, core. The United States is not the imperial core. And again, that's the limited mindset of not recognizing that the United States is just a tool, not even of Western Europe, but of the imperialist system itself, which is actually the core, is the Mediterranean Sea. And continuing further, it's just like a whole, it's the Middle Earth between the equator and the polarity of the North Pole particularly. That's the core of imperialism that circles around. And it's beneficial to recognize that, because the part that has yet to be that has yet to be properly addressed and recognized as part of the imperialism is this continent. And what I mean by this continent, not the United States, I'm talking about the indigenous core of this continent being part of the world imperialism. How can that be? Yo, let's reason and study, but we've got to be honest. So anyways, I'm just going to wrap it up with what we're going to say about it, because I got to plug this joint in, because we're at that point now. The point is, we listen for a while because we give, even after this experience for years, there's always enough information about just life in China, and in respect for Brethren Daniel Dunbar for actually doing that, living in China. Now, he's doing that particularly, presumably, as he says, because his wife is from China, his children are Chinese, and so there's practical benefits that he has in doing that. So there's appreciation for that. So that's something to be said on his behalf, and one of the things that continues to provide him credibility. Again, I'm presuming this whole 2 hours is still being audio recorded. Oh, look at me, I'm so authentic, I'm so together and all that stuff, whilst I look for the electricity without providing too much gas. Okay. There's an electric cord somewhere around here. Ah, no, that's not it. That's not it. I see it right there. If I do that, and I do that, and I do that, how do you do that? Uh-oh. Did we just find it? I think we just found it. Okay. That's nice, because then we can abbreviate this. Oh, frustration. So, to sum up the journey about the young brethren. So, the brethren Daniel Dunbar describes him as escaping the United States, and it's to be honest, it's clickbait, because he's not escaping the United States. He's vacationing. He's on study break. He has means, presumably, to travel. presumably on a U.S. passport. Um, he's not seeking asylum. He didn't talk about, to my knowledge, I didn't watch the whole thing, I stopped. But he's not talking about being a refugee in China. He's talking about living and working in China and working with people. And then he talks eventually, like maybe 15, 20 minutes into the conversation, he talks about wanting to eventually return to the United States and taking what he's learned and applying that to changing the system in the United States. Boom, boom, warning flag, stop. That's it. No more. That's the whole trope of like the liberal, the we can call it the Euro liberal or the any liberal, but just that whole notion of going back and working in the system. Nope. Talked a lot about the elections and this and the other. Gave that some not even the benefit of the doubt, but just gave it some patience. But then when we saw what the intentions are, that's it, done. And at that point, now we got to be mindful of like what the ear we give to Brethren Daniel Dumbrell for setting that up, because it's intentional, because it's game. And what the game is that Brethren, and this is not hate, this is just like deconstructing it so that people can be mindful. First of all, let's talk about the Eurocentric, the Euroliberal trope, which is just imperialism. And as nice as the game is, so when the Brethren was talking about socialism, already that was a red flag. Ha ha, boom, boom, boom. Because like it's an ism, and any ism people already know the isms are gone. Like the isms are no solution. Any ism, capitalism, socialism, communism, even religionism, all the isms, no, it's not system. That's not the solution. I should listen to Brethren who went to Norway. I have to remember what his name is. How about that? I'll look that up. Do I have that? Can you buy that? So, do we talk about the Young Brethren any further? Just right. Okay, so we'll talk about the Euro thing, and then we'll talk about the Young Brethren, and that's it. So the Euro thing is like it's liberalism, liberals, and liberals who just sound so sympathetic and sound like they have the empathic ear, or like the new radical solution or new revolutionary solution. No, it's still part of the system. It's still part of the empire. It's still relying on. The way you tell is this: are they a citizen? Are they still a citizen in the United States? Yes. Oh, that's imperialism. Plain and simple. Are they using money? Do they have a job? Are they expecting to get raise funds and raise monies? That's imperialism. They're still relying upon the same constructs of oppression, citizenship, money. That's not the solution. And so all the radical talk or whatever is either bullshit or suspect, one or the other. Bullshit because it's a lie, one, straight up, or suspect because it's misleading and it's guiding would-be revolutionaries and whatever into trouble, just like the activists from Minnesota who enamors the youngsters because he's an OG activist and has credibility because he did this, that, and the other back in those old campaigns. But lo and behold, he turned out to be an FBI informant and was just like continuing to do these hype talks just to recruit people, young brethren, impressionable brethren, into doing dirt in order for those younger brethren to get caught up and locked up. That's the game. And that's what some of what we, not just we see with the Brethren Daniel Dumbrell, not specifically, particularly that per se, but it's a trope of people misleading, playing the role of a would-be revolutionary or would-be like thinking outside of the system and everything like that. But it's just a ploy to like guide people into this delusion and deliriousness of staying within the system. I can be accused of the same thing because here I am talking on the phone. I am even using money. Do I got money on me? No, but I have somewhere. I'm even using money now. And that's another thing we can talk about because it's so frustrating to do that. But that's where things are at this moment. Ain't no excuses. And we're still working on solution, to be honest. And that's something to talk about too, because we are all recognizing that it's been a minute and it's getting a little bit wary. It's getting a little bit wary. Anyways, so finishing up with this, so that's some of the things with the Euro liberal is like, regardless of how nice and particularly like it's the youngsters who are brilliant and still kind of like have some sense or at least express or are able to convey some semblance of belief in what they're talking about or what they're actually saying, and seem to be innocent enough, like that people can give them the benefit of, like, well, maybe they think, maybe they can be. No, 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 and no, it's not it. The brethren are not innocent. They're running game, and that's all right. That's what it is. So that's the Euroliberal. And again, telltale signs: are they a citizen? Are they using money? Are they soliciting, or are they suggesting money? The utilization of money is part of the solution, whether it's through memberships, as we develop a cooperative right now that involves membership. Technically, it doesn't involve money though; it's a percentage. So that's part of it. But then also, like, what the suggested or like the feigned solutions are in terms of like, so what do you think the answer is? And when kinfolk start talking about policy or institution system, that's all imperialism. So I said, I think an hour ago that we were going to talk about solutions today, didn't we? Okay. Well, are we done talking about the negativity? Oh, one other thing. Again, so the Brendan is traveling on a U.S. passport, presumably. Didn't watch the say it specifically, but him intending to go back to the United States suggests that he hasn't renounced his U.S. citizenship. So right there, again, he's planning to return into the imperialism. What he refers to himself as the core or whatever, that's telling on himself. So yeah, no, not giving ear to that. No, support the young generation. No, bullshit. That's a little bit strong, but that's a little bit of the reactionaryism for brethren Daniel Dumbrell duping us into whatever, listening to what they were talking about. Because again, Daniel Dumbrell has credibility for living in China, but he's running a bar and making money. He mentions his wife works somewhere with China, but again, China itself is not like the Shangri-La in the utopia of solution. It's imperialist as well. So just living in China, it might seem like revolutionary and radical for a Westerner because it's a no-go state or whatever, according to the formal policies of the United States, but it's all one world system of imperialism, so that's not it. And his own work is very much entrenched in it, so that's not solution. He's not living it. He's not living it. So if you're not hardcore unless you live hardcore. That's Jack Black, School of Hard Rock or something like that. School of Rock. Which again, talking about children, any children actors, there's exploitation. Even when it's not explicit pedophilia and whatever, it's still like latent, to be honest, because there's a solicitation of the audience falling in love with the kinfolk who are being presented. So right there, it intrinsically, to be honest, is pedophilia. Even just children actors. Sound of Music particularly is that. Anyways, that was a side note. Love and Peace of Jack Black and all the kinfolk of School of Rock. Still not living it, and that's not the solution. So here we go with the solution. Patience. How about that? First patience. Purpose. We believe in the Most High, and we believe life is suffering. We believe life is purposeful because in life we heal. We heal and provide for the well-being of others in this life. Tikkun olam. Dukkha and Tikkun olam. That's the yin and the yang that we observe. So that provides us context, that provides us guidance. Equilibrium and harmony. The stillness and the movement. So that's some of the existential kind of framework to receive, observe, practice, study, share, solution. Now, when we do that, what we recognize, one, it's not a matter of trying to overthrow a system. It's not even a matter of trying to change the system. None such ambitions, because those ambitions are delirious. They lose concentration. They lose genuineness. That's not it. It's not. Nah, that's not it. Just plain and simple, it's not it. We're 7:30 in this joint. Why didn't me? What is solution? Okay, keep saying not it. How about this? This is it. 1, honesty, sharing, chastity, I did it wrong order. Wrong order. Wrong order. Peace, sharing, chastity, honesty. It's been over a minute since I did my prayer meditation, huh? Peace, sharing, chastity, honesty, and sobriety. That's solution right there. Plain and simple. And when we do that proficiently, that tells us the rest of the solutions. So right there, that's the formula. Plain and simple, best we can tell it. Now, to help us keep a mindfulness of that, of those 5 principles within our own respective language, whatever language we are practicing predominantly, it's helpful because any language that we're speaking, to be honest, generally speaking, particularly when it's a world-known language, it's significantly influenced, infested, infused with imperialism. So even within our own language, by and large, we need buffers. We need things to keep away as much as possible those negative influences. Mantras, songs, prayers. Those are ways of doing it, so that when we find a solution, a behavioral solution within ourselves to cultivate righteousness and balance, the equilibrium and the harmony within ourselves, and how to manifest that outside of ourselves, at least these physical respective selves, these ugly sacks of mostly water that we are, according to Gene Roddenberry and crew. Back to the train of thought. This is where a student says just one word. You're talking about this? Oh yeah, right. Okay. Not necessarily a student, anybody. Bueller, again, pedophilia, brethren in the shower. That's reverse pedophilia, to be honest. Because he was a young brethren, but he was older, maybe 17, 18, still young. What they call a nubile or whatever. But I saw that when I was younger than him, younger than Matthew Broderick. And that normalizes that because he seems like a big brother or like the leader to emulate to younger children that I am at that moment. And again, it seems he's cool. He's the thing to be. He's Ferris Bueller. But he's in a shower talking to nothing. That's the psychology of that right there. The invasion of privacy, the normalization of the invasion of privacy amidst doctors and inspecting children with and without parents. I remember that I'm saying this because just this past day in being online, I see a screenshot of Ferris Bueller laying on a bed, talking to the 4th window. Is that the 4th window? The 4th screen or whatever. And so again, all those shots of him in his bedroom, and additionally, for adults, it's pedophilia. Look at that teenage boy with charisma and everything in his own bedroom. For the pedophile men. But again, to show that to children, for children to see that. I was a child when I saw that. There's same thing even with like Tom Hanks and Big. Similar situation. So anyways, going back on track. We were talking about blah blah. We're talking about game. We're talking about pseudo-revolutionaries. We're talking about living the way. We're talking about solutions. How about that, weren't we? Talking about solutions. Talking about behavior. Talking about cultivating that within ourselves. I mentioned before, like an hour ago, 2 hours ago. I mentioned hours ago that a wise person speaks, knowing every word becomes true. So when we cultivate discipline within ourselves, behavioral discipline within ourselves, we calm our minds. We are further mindful within our words. Believe it or not, even I am further mindful with my words. And that mindfulness of our words helps us to manifest the well-being around us. So that's all solution. That's not hype. It's not yin-yang in that negative street sense. It's positive yin-yang. It's that real yin yang. That's the solution. Now, we got to work with others. We got to work beyond ourselves, our own individual selves, families, friends, community. And so when we talk about those solutions, it's a matter of village. And what we talked about before, intentional municipality, working with other kinfolk who share a similar mindset, shared similar discipline, and working to live literally as community, conventionally as possible. Some being further um, uh, diplomatically situated with convention, still having even citizenship, still holding conventional accounts or whatever, but working with others who are further off the grid, further attuned and invested within the principles of the collective. Traditionally, as we mentioned before, with the religious communities. And that being the foundation of authority and stability and support within the community. And the convention just becomes the means of like keeping the threats away and enhancing and optimizing the nourishment within the collective, within the community. So again, it's behavioral. It's a matter of finding our purpose and recognizing our talent for healing, our shared purpose with others as community, as spouses, um, family, and friends. And then when working together, living literally as village together. It might be a campus, it might even just be a building. But living together, that's the solution. It's not changing the system, it's not voting, it's not even investing or diverse investing or whatever. It's land, it's living, and it's loved ones. Loved ones, living, and land. That's probably the way we should do it. Loved ones, living, and land. The three L's. We're not going to take an L. We're going to take three L's. How about that? Yeah. How about that? So that's our solution. Plain and simple. That's it. And you find it for yourself. You find it best as you know yourself. We show a general blueprint, and it's for you to apply it to where you is, who you is, what you is, what that is, all that. Plain and simple. Now it's simple in terms of the structure, but it takes much further in the doing. And who's going to be the leadership in this? Two categories. Police is going to be a leader. Who else? Teachers. Police and teachers. That's who leads the community into these solutions, into this new age of the Black Buddha, Ubuntu science, and nano civilization. Because the police are the ones that provide protection and like just the no nonsense, like we don't have time for all that blibber blabber. You secure the gate, organize, know how to keep the community safe, comfortable. Police. Knowing physical fitness, martial arts, defense, knowing what's going on in the world, what the threats are. Police. Having, and particularly in the initial stages of transformation of civilization, having credibility with mainstream society, mainstream households. Police. That's that side. Now, and again, kinfolk who are still on like the police versus streets type of thing, recognize that's not even a game today. The game, and it never was the game, the game is angels and demons. And if you go on the streets and you're not talking to the police, okay, fine. Are you talking to the demons? That's who you need to be worried about. Because the demons don't wear badges and let you know too easy. The demons are right up under you, smiling, saying, hey friend, how you doing today? Now as I say that, now I'm ready. I'm getting ready for somebody to come up to me and say, hey friend, how are you doing today? Because that's the nature of what we're dealing with this time. So you're talking about the police, yo. USO 1988. And then teachers, teach us. Teacher, 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 teach, man. Burning Spear. The teachers got to teach us that mathematics, the social, the religiosity. There's so much to teach us. Continually, language, songs, stories, rituals, ethics. Teachers. The teachers are the ones who emphasize how to talk, relate with each other, communicate. Yes, teachers for the children. We love the children's, but teachers for the adults, teachers for everybody. And again, that's working where a system is at this moment. The police and teachers of the system, and taking those skills and knowledge and experience and applying that to intentional municipality, and then continually as a municipality, an intentional municipality, continuing as police and teachers to provide the necessary services, the priority services within that municipality, and then others from that teaching and with that protection, providing the other services, whether it's governance, whether it's economics, trade, crafts, otherwise. But those are the two main groups in terms of like the leaders of like the transformation, the leaders of the revolution or whatever else, police and teachers. I'm starting to like relieve my muscularity of my facial features, so that tells me it's time to get going because fatigue. Now, there are some things that occurred to me to share before I bounce, but now that I've said that, I've started momentum, and let's see, if you think about anything else to share at the moment. Wow. It's been a long time. So, I already shared the children of the Middle Passage. Share a couple of the ones. These are some phraseologies that we're sharing. We're seeing how it resonates, how it registers. The first one is democracy and institutions are feminist expressions of polygyny. Yes or no? We say yes. How that is. Listen. Up. Like this. First of all, recognize like men and women are different. And what is considered cheating for a man and having sexual intercourse with another woman when he is married to a first woman, that being recognized as adultery on the part of the man because he is being unfaithful and disloyal to his wife by having physical relations, intimacies with another woman. Now, the thing about it is that the way a man experiences pleasure and expresses greed is significantly through physical interaction. That being said, the way a woman experiences, or a woman is different. I just say it like this: a woman is different, and in many ways, sex for a woman is intimacy in other ways. It's obeying a man's command, and we're talking in a very traditional sense here. It's obeying a man's command, doing what a man says, finding security and comfort, and adhering to the authority of a man. And when a woman does that, if she's married to one man and she's starting to listen to the commands of another man, that's like her husband having sex with another woman. Her obeying the command of another man is like the husband having sex with another woman. That's the nature of the disloyalty and the betrayal that a wife commits against her own husband when adhering to the word of another man. And that's just one example. Finding comfort, siding with another man. If there's an argument and like two men are having an argument and the wife sides with the one arguing against her husband, what? I don't give a fuck what the philosophy is. No. Why? Priority is to the husband. Husband is not number one. God is number one. If the husband is tripping, okay. But, and I'm talking about in a general thing. Again, if the husband is committing an atrocity and refuses to recognize that, I mean, that's another thing. But we're talking about just general like disagreements or comparatively mundane stuff. A woman sides with another man. Yeah, well, what? Huh? So, point being that when women find shelter, when women find guidance and security and comfort and loyalty to institutions, that is a betrayal and disloyalty to the allegiance to her own husband. Even when that institution is run by all women, it's still the way a woman commits adultery against a husband. She's trusting, she's prioritizing her relationship and dependence onto another thing aside from her own husband. That's betrayal. Like, serious. And the continual, ongoing practice of that can be recognized as polygyny. If a woman has these multiple allegiances and additionally, those are betrayals against her husband. So that's what I mean by that part of it. Democracy is a similar thing. Democracy is power, and it's participating in power, and it's adhering to an authority, a power construct outside of that of her husband. So any group getting together at a majority and winning the election or winning the policy, the woman being required to abide by that is betraying her own husband. And that systemic practice and particularly commitment to doing that is polygyny. A woman is essentially married to multiple entities, and that is what we contend as the equivalent or as the feminine expression of polygyny. That's the first joint. Here's the second joint. Privilege and freedom are mutually exclusive. Excuse me. Privilege and freedom are mutually exclusive. Yes or no? We say yes. Why? Because privilege is the notion of exclusivity. Not everybody gets it. And if not everybody gets it, not everybody receives it, those who don't receive it ain't free. Oh, because if they were free and they wanted it, they would have it. And they don't. They can't. So they not. That's an abrogation of freedom itself. Even when it's somebody, one particular person or group's infringement of freedom, it infringes everybody's. Because then everybody is subject to those conditions of impediment. And in addition to that, what's recognized is that even those who are privileged, quote unquote, are selected to be part of the group or whatever, are imprisoned. They have to abide by the protocols of that in-group and being valued as part of the in-group in order to maintain and receive and experience those privileges. And that is not freedom. They have to abide by some other people's rules and edicts and otherwise in order to stay in that zone of privilege, and thus it is not free. So those who are privileged don't experience freedom because they can't be who they can't be whatever they want to be. They have to be what's expected of them within that realm of privilege. Privilege and freedom are mutually exclusive. Those are the things we have to share at this moment. Excuse me. We give all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim, blessed love and peace and Rastafari.